Welcome back to another episode of the Royal Academy Book Club. These are my esteemed co-hosts who are trying not to laugh very hard. Dilga and Morabite. We're reading
I'm mostly failing.
Learning the Art of Learning, and let's get into it. So this chapter was on the soft zone, which I believe is essentially equivalent to the zone, but I don't know. He describes it a little bit differently than maybe Jared Tendler would describe it. I've also been reading MGOP too, so I'm probably going to be talking like connections to that as well, because why not? So okay, really nice one to open it up. So he says, from one perspective, the opponent is the enemy. On the other hand, there is no one who knows you more intimately, no one who challenges you so profoundly or pushes you to excellence and growth so relentlessly, right? And this brought up kind of an interesting thought, right? Like, respect for one's enemy is something that I very, very rarely see in League players, right? And I wonder why that is, right? First of all, is it just like my like recency bias or whatever, right? Like or like frequency bias? Like, does it actually happen less than in other sports, or
I mean, when you consider
not?
the fact that like most of it's online, and like we talked about anonymity online makes people assholes.
So you think it's the
Like
anonymity?
a lot of people don't even see other players as people. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, if it's talking about online, then yeah, it's because it's online. And
So
if it's like
you would
an actual,
suspect
like
that,
a physical tournament,
yeah,
it's I would suspect that there's as much as in any other sport. Just that the
I guess that's
times
true.
where there is like blatant disrespect, it gets broadcast really heavily.
People,
True.
people are like,
Yeah,
that's
it's-
not okay,
Oh,
and then
God.
go and yell at their solo queue teammates.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like even if we take another example, like Reddit. Let's take Reddit for example. They will blow out of proportion anything that happens, but like being respectful to your opponent is not gonna make that happen at all.
True. Doesn't
So-
make headlines. So
I find it
So it might be
really
an
funny
availability
because
heuristic,
they'll
too.
they'll get really pissed off if someone said something kind of mean on like stage, and then they'll go tell their solo queue teammates to end their lives, and it's like, all right, sure, that's a totally fair reaction. Whatever just happened.
indeed. But yeah, I've found that and I'm just gonna get up here on my soapbox for a second, right? I've found that respecting your opponents actually can help your mental game, right?
Yep.
And I think that's something that I've probably talked about with you before. One of you, at
Maybe,
least?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Probably.
It's like the idea is essentially, right, if
If he's good, then making a mistake is not you being terrible, it's them being good. And it's like-
exactly. So it can help you feel less unlucky, right? Because if you can actually see that it's their skill and not luck, right, that's causing the bad outcome, then you can see variance in a clearer light, and so that can be a little bit less frustrating. But then of course you have to come up against the fact that you just got outplayed, and that's we get back into the same stuff we were talking about a couple weeks ago, right? With solo queue matches you with teammates that are supposed to be the same level as you, so if you lose to them, then how can you climb, yada yada, right? So
I think that a lot of people miss is that people will take the play that happened I got outplayed, that must mean I'm bad, right? Where it's it's the things that happen in games should have no impact on your self-worth or
Yeah.
self-confidence as a player, right? Where it's obviously if a bad thing happens, it's bad, but it's it doesn't mean that you're bad or that the thing is making you bad or whatever, right?
yeah, no, it's just that you maybe hit the top of their range, maybe hit the bottom of your range, maybe some combination of, and
And even then, it's one of the things is there's always small things that went well, right? Even if nothing big went well, you have to find the small things or
Yeah.
you're never going to feel good.
And I'll go even one step further, right? Is being bad even wrong? Is there anything bad with being bad, right?
No.
Everyone starts as
Yes.
a learner. Everyone does their best, so it's
Yeah, I've been using the when you get flamed out of lobby and they're like, you're bad, and I'm like, yeah, and And they're like, you played 1,000 games this season and you're here, so you're bad. And I'm like, yeah, sure, okay. And
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like,
and
who cares?
and they just people just trip over themselves because because most people can't own the fact that they're bad, and they get they feel attacked because someone says they're bad.
Yeah.
Not only that, it's like they're just as bad as you being in the same game, and then they'll find something. They're like, oh yeah, well, I may be in this elo, but at least I haven't been in this elo for 1,000 games. And you're like, oh yeah, that's true. I saw that picture. That was fucking great. Like, yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. And then he just left.
It's always a matter of like. I lost my train of thought. Never mind. Second quote. So he says after for reference, he's playing in an international tournament in India, right? And he says after about 10 minutes of thought, I began to lose myself in the variations. It is a strange feeling. First, you're a person looking at a chessboard. You calculate through the various alternatives, the mind gaining speed as it pours through the complexities, until consciousness of one's separation from the position ebbs away, and what remains is the sensation of being inside the energetic chess flow. The mind moves with the speed of an electrical current. Complex problems are breezed through with an intuitive clarity. You get deeper and deeper into the soul of the chess position. Time falls away. The concept of I is gone. All that exists is blissful engagement, pure presence, absolute flow. I was in the zone, and then there was an earthquake. Somehow, the earthquake and the dying lights spurred me to revelation. I had a crystallization of thought, resurfaced, and vacated the trembling playing room. When I returned and play resumed, I immediately made my move and went on to win the game. So, after reading this, I was like, okay, that's really interesting. And I wanted to like go and compare to the description of flow that we see in The Mental Game of Poker 2, right? And like what conclusions can we actually draw about like perhaps what caused him to enter the zone and the resultant breakthrough, right? So when I come back to my notes on The Mental Game of Poker 2, he talks about factors that people things that people usually describe being in the zone being like sentences. He says the game feels easy, decisions are made automatically, check. You have gut instincts, senses, or feelings about the right decisions, but can't necessarily explain their rationale, check. You're able to consider more factors than normal and process them more quickly, check and check. You feel calm, patient, and at ease. There's no stress or difficulty, even with things that normally would cause tilt or anxiety, check. You're totally engrossed and in the flow of the action. Any thoughts of the past or future are purely strategic and involve reflecting on past decisions and planning future streets. Check. Your perception of time is altered, and you lose a sense of it. Check. For some players, time flies by. For others, it slows down. It seems like it was both for him, right? You're focused purely on execution and not on results. Check. Results are an ego-oriented thing. The concept of I disappears. You don't experience any outside thoughts or distractions, including the mental game issues that typically creep in. Now, this is the one that I think is kind of interesting, right? So then he talks about, the kind of the facets of entering the zone, right? Those being like energy learning in the data stream, right? And to just very, very quickly summarize kind of the theory here, it's like energy is like, you need to find the right amount. For some people it's higher, for some people it's lower, but everyone has kind of like that space where they're in the best spot. You need to be doing learning to continually push skills through and have enough space in your head to get intuitions at all, basically. And you need to have access to the data stream. You need to actually be able to see the position or think about the position or be interfacing with the data of like playing the game, right? Like having done learning and being in the right energy doesn't do it alone. You need to actually be playing a game, right? So to come back to this, the notion to me seems that like, and I can't remember exactly what was going on in the chapter. I think he mentioned that it was like super duper hot and he was super duper jet lagged and tired, and then it seems to me like the earthquake like happened, and that like raised his energy level, right? And that was then what caused him to maybe move even further into the zone than he already was, right? Or I don't know. Does that seem like a reasonable thought?
It's a possibility. I'm not sure. That seems like kind of a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
To me, to say that the earthquake pushed him, well, raised his energy level, maybe. Is it? Does the chapter say like that he? Because as I understand it and as I recall, it's the earthquake. The earthquake happens, and he wasn't like he didn't notice it at first or something. I don't remember exactly what it was.
He did notice it. He did notice it, but he noticed it and used it, right? I'll go on to the next quote because it does a really good job of kind of explaining his thoughts on it, right? He says, in performance training, we first learn to flow with whatever comes, right? To essentially use or ignore distractions, right? Then we learn to use whatever comes to our advantage, right? Actually use it to help you play better, right? When usually it would be a distraction. And then finally, we learn to be completely self-sufficient and create our own earthquakes so that our mental process feeds itself into explosive inspirations without the need for outside stimulus, right? So that seems kind of crazy to me. I don't know if I've heard anything like that in the mental game of poker or anywhere else. So I don't know. This is new and interesting, I think, because certainly it's like, I mean, like, you know, there's a ton of information on like flow out there, right? But then like even above and beyond that, like, I don't know. Like I say, in his words, explosive inspirations, right? It's sort of like the moment that you go plus ultra, I guess, to do a My Hero Academia reference. So yeah, I don't know. I actually agree with you. I think you're right. I think it's not
Yes.
necessarily an energy raising thing.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I could. It's a possibility, but I'm.
Yeah, it
Not
seems like there's
gonna-
something more there, though.
Yeah. There is.
So he talks about the hard zone versus the soft zone, right? In the hard zone, he says, like, basically if you're tense, right, then you require that the world cooperates with you in order to function, right? You need everything to be quiet. You'll often feel yourself be tensed, right? And any distraction like breaks you out of your concentration, right? Where then he contrasts that with the soft zone, right? Which is you're relaxed, you're able to flow with whatever happens, right? Which tends to beget resilience in the face of distractions, right? He recounts an Indian parable, which says, a man wants to walk across the land, but the earth is covered in thorns. He has two options. One is to pave his road to tame all of nature into compliance, and the other is to make sandals. The moral of which seems to be like, you know, intelligent prep and cultivated resilience are much more efficient and effective than overpowering force to try to control every aspect of your surroundings, right? It's like, change yourself, don't change the world, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I know more, but I know you have been experimenting with kind of different types of focus in your games, especially visual focus, right? And how those have kind of influenced your ability to get into or not get into the zone and I don't know. Like, I remember you working on that. How has that progressed? What did you find?
Well, that's a good question because I have no idea. So I guess for me, it's like it works, but I find that I have to be in a good mood for it to work, right? Where it's like if I'm in a bad mood and try to do it, it's just everything feels terrible and I just don't want to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've also found that the breath control helps me control my emotional state, so that I'm almost always at a neutral state rather than at a negative state starting out. So I'm not really too sure. I mean, I think the problem is that I'm realizing that flow state isn't really about the type of focus you use, but it's rather about the efficiency with which you use it. Like, it's not about like, oh, when you're in flow, always using your peripheral vision. It's more like, oh, I'm in flow, I'm using my peripheral vision when I need to and using my regular vision when I need to, as opposed to like always one type of thing. It's like an efficient stacking of how I look and what I see and what I do.
So you haven't necessarily found that consciously changing your visual focus has effects on your ability to enter or exit the zone, necessarily.
Right. The thing that I've found that really affects how I enter and exit the zone is conscious breath cycles. That's been the key for me.
Yeah, makes sense. But yeah, I think you're. Yeah, you noticed a pattern there, but it seems like maybe you kind of identified an effect that you perhaps thought was a cause, right? It's like when you are in the zone, you do have a wide focus, but having a wide focus doesn't put you in the zone. Yeah, makes sense. So, for some number of years, Josh was plagued by like catchy music taking over his internal dialogue, right? And making thinking like very, very difficult, right? And he recounts how in response, he eventually learned to think to the beat of the music, right? He trained by like blasting loud music while he was studying to try to acclimate to it and stop being so distracted by it. And he also did this by playing in Central Park because he was also distracted by smoke when there was smoke around, and other kinds of things like that. So I just wanted to ask you guys, like, have you ever experienced anything like that in League? I know that actually I feel like I haven't, so I'm interested to hear if you guys have or not. To be clear, having issues with like invasive thoughts, like taking over your decision-making process.
Well, actually, so this is going to be kind of funny, but I've experienced that during the book club when I was doing an experiment of trying to play a game of League of Legends on a Smurf account while talking in the book club actively.
Yeah.
So, like having literally only invasive thoughts and only the base elements of my game working. So yeah, I have experienced it, and it was a funny, an interesting thing because I could see exactly what was my unconscious, what my unconscious decisions were, without having to be exhausted or tilted or whatever. I was
that's really
just
interesting.
playing, and that's what happened.
That's actually kind of neat, right? So maybe as an alternative to like playing when you're really tilted, you can just play while you're really distracted, and you can actively influence that distraction. That's really, really cool, actually. I kind of like that.
If you want to know what someone's C game look like, you just do that.
I just sit there and just have like an interesting, deep conversation with them while they try to CS. It's so awful. Oh God, I'd hate that.
You've seen me do that, and I beat ass. I don't know.
I have. It's crazy. But yeah, like,
it's like So it's like my C game is better than my A game. What? No.
Well,
Weird.
it's not necessarily C game. It's just unconscious competence, right?
Yeah.
So
A C game doesn't mean you'll have a bad game.
No, for sure.
You can be on a C game and just absolutely curb stomp your opponent.
laundry. But yeah, so I don't know. It's like for me, I guess, right? I think in more, or not more. I think in non-real-time games, I think that this is a much bigger issue, right? Because like when you're sitting there trying to focus consistently for like long periods of time and you're getting like exhausted, I've definitely had invasive thoughts come in while I'm like trying to write an essay or trying to write an article or something like that, right? But I haven't experienced it during the game, I think because there's such a strong conscious amount of decision making to do, I guess, or like the like time pressure or something. I don't know. Like maybe this just isn't a problem that I've had yet, but like I feel like there might be something there. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's a real-time game where you have to be constantly. You are basically never allowed to be distracted by something outside of the game if you don't have something literally coming up and stealing your screen away.
Yeah.
Or being in your ears so loudly that you can't hear what's going on. I'm sorry. What? Moribite,
It's like
are you
the
playing with Legos? I'm
it is
slightly
present.
confused.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, it feels like the like constant stream of small decisions does a really good job of kind of blocking out those
Yeah.
more invasive thoughts. But I don't know.
That's the
You
point
know
of.
what it is? It's probably not that. It's the fact that League is visually interesting.
That too.
Mm,
I mean, when you're doing some
There's
shit
stuff
like writing
moving.
an essay, there's like literally nothing happening on your screen.
Yeah. And playing chess,
It's
roughly the
basically
same thing.
just
You're
like
staring at a
strong-
static position.
It's like your self one just isn't, distracted like it
Yeah.
is when you're playing League.
By the way,
That's why when
is
people
that
say
self
like
one
when
from
things are
IGOT
like,
or self one from Thinking Fast and Slow? Because they're swapped.
I mean, I kind of consider both the same, really.
What?
It's kind of like maybe like because I get to think about it. It's like
They call
self
self one,
one is
self two
definitely the slow
in
thinker.
the other one. Okay, so you're talking
well,
slow.
sure, but like, no, I'm thinking I got for sure.
What?
So self two's the doer, and self one's the thinker.
Okay, self one is thinker. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Conscious or unconscious? Yeah. Conscious is distracted. That makes sense.
I mean, when you think about all the things that like people will say you want to focus, then one of the first things people would do is like, well, you make the visual field interesting, right? Because that'll catch your attention.
Yeah. I think there's really something to that, right? Is it? What's Kaplan's first name? Stephen Kaplan?
Steve Kaplan, yeah.
Steve Kaplan, and he's the one that did the stuff about like how walking in the woods is like
Yeah.
more interesting.
Yeah, environmental psychology.
Yeah, environmental psychology. Yeah, so there was this there was this researcher that actually happened to be the advisor for my dad's doctorate thesis, who was he was a researcher into a number of different things, but including environmental psychology, right? And one of the things that he kind of found was that like walking in nature is one of the most psychologically restful experiences that a person can have, and part of that is that when you're walking in nature, there's so much for the eye to like wander over, right? So yeah, there's something there. I think
The
you're
thing
right.
is it's really hard to not have a wide and open focus when you're walking in the forest.
Yeah, you have to. It's true. Otherwise, you're gonna literally
And
trip and
studies
fall.
show that wide and open focus show that it's more restful than constant, singular, like really
Yeah,
heavy
directed
focus.
Yep.
Because directed focus is what hunters would use to hunt animals, right? And then when they're relaxed, they would go back to a wider berth because they need to be on alert for predators and stuff.
Makes sense.
So I guess the nervous system was probably programmed to an extent to be like, hey, if you're constantly not using a peripheral vision, then you're constantly in fight or flight mode.
Yeah,
And that's
that makes
stressful.
sense. That's a neat connection. I hadn't thought of that before.
That's why I try to always be taking deep breaths and try to be using my peripheral vision. I have noticed that I'm a lot more relaxed lately, and I'm a lot more able to tell when I'm feeling anxious or restless, and just take a few deep breaths, and I'm usually pretty good.
Sweet. So it goes on to talk about a certain Russian chess player that was very sneaky. He got into his head by tapping a chess piece on the side of the table, just
right.
barely audibly, right, and slightly more quickly than is a comfortable rhythm to think at, right? And as a result of that, he found himself rushing a little bit and making blunders that he wouldn't otherwise be making. And finally, somebody told him, and he was like, "Oh!" And as soon as he was aware of it, he was fine and able to recover and win. But it's it'll get you, right? The subtle psychological manipulation stuff is it has a big impact, especially when you're trying to focus really, really hard. He says too, other players would just blatantly cheat, right? Kick him under the table, go talk to their coaches in the middle of the match, right? Which naturally upset him quite a bit. And he says it wasn't until much later that he was able to learn to deal with these distractions. I don't know. So, here's the thought. What kinds of psychological pressures can we think of that might be effective in League, right? As just very slightly
I can tell you one
things. I know the alt chat question mark is a great one, right? But it seems a little obvious, right? So what are
Alistair
subtle ones?
cowbell.
The Alistair combo? What do you
That
mean?
shit annoys me so much. People just walk in the lane
Oh,
as
just-
Alistar and just continually use the cowbell.
Oh, the cowbell.
no.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you said combo, and I was like, you just
No.
hate playing against
Cowbell.
Alistair? What do you mean?
He's just standing on his deck and being like, "You can't will peace."
I will. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true.
No.
No, emote spamming is a really good one, actually. Yeah, that's
Lulu's love in lane or Lux.
Oh yeah.
There's
do
those
you
are
know,
things that would make you commit
the
murder.
repeated ones?
Yeah.
One thing I used to do was when I was zoning people, is I would walk toward them and then press stop immediately.
I was just gonna say that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, in tethering,
100%.
about something that for tethering, I think that's really you emote spam while tethering.
Oh God, yeah. No, it's a situation where they're not allowed to walk up. You just rub it in their face. Oh man,
Yeah.
that's the worst. Yeah.
I used to, when I was zoning on Twitch versus a Caitlyn or something, I would continually walk forward on them, but while also pressing E, so it would just continually walk E, walk stop.
Yeah.
But that
And,
would really piss them off, I think, because they would do some stupid shit and die.
Yeah, amusingly though, I feel repeatedly canceling an auto attack is so much more friendly. Am I insane for saying that, or
I have no
you
idea
know-
what you mean.
there's the people who will walk up and they'll right click S, really really fast. So it's just you're just and you're shooting the minion, but you're not actually shooting it because you cancel the auto attack right
Yeah.
before. I feel that specific emote spam isn't BM. I don't know. It's never bothered me. I actually always found it kind of a friendly interaction almost.
Yes, it's you're enjoying yourself and not at the expense of the opponent.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Oh, I guess actually, if you're standing directly on top of them and you could kill them and you're doing that to them, that's a little
Yes.
BM. But
That one is yeah.
yeah, but doing it to a minion is not threatening. I guess. I don't know. It's weird. Why is emote spamming?
Yes.
I guess it's. I mean, it's literally a taunt. So okay.
What
Makes
about
sense.
dropping wards under the enemy tower? I'm not trying to see it.
Ooh! Oh god! I mean, that's just horrible. God. Yeah.
Walking
no.
into Fountain as you're entering the game is pretty mean too.
Yeah.
Um,
Gosh. Throwing skill shots in random directions because you just don't even need the mana. I mean, that's just like actually PM. You're just
I've
throwing
known
away
people,
a lead.
I've known
for no
people
reason.
who like were about to end and then they just surrender.
Yeah. Taking tower shots for no reason just because you can. That's another great
Yeah,
one.
tanking tower and standing still
Yeah.
while doing it. Like the,
Yeah.
I think like it's SOAS that did that like a lot of seasons ago during the,
Yeah.
the LEC. He was playing Shen and he just walked up to the tower and took shots, and then he was standing and the enemy team was just couldn't do anything, and he was just tanking them.
Yeah. Showing them their own powerlessness, I guess, is like.
Yeah.
That's really what it is in most of the situations. It's just like, you're in a bad spot. I know it.
And you just force them to be focused on the fact that they're in a bad spot, not how to get into a good one.
Precisely. Yeah. That's really good.
You focused on getting them injustice tilted.
Precisely.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Actually, that's probably pretty much exactly it, right? I mean, if you want the
Yeah.
ultimate psychological warfare guide, read the mental game of poker and apply it in reverse. Bring up all of their fears.
Actually true. Just like,
Absolutely horrible.
do the
Until you find the one guy who reads the mental game of poker and has everything on the conscious
and-
confidence.
yeah,
Until you
and then
try
you
to
just
tell
like-
him and he's just like, dude.
He's impervious.
Well, all right.
And then you get
Actually,
reverse
like-
tilted by result because you're trying to do something and he's made you powerless. Isn't that the worst? What a role reversal.
no, actually it's not.
I mean,
Unless you're
yeah, I
relying
agreed.
exclusively on that
Honestly,
to
if
win.
I'm like taunting somebody and he's just like totally fine with it, I'm like, okay, do you want to like join my server? Like, like, buddy. Yeah. So to continue with the quotes, the next one that he talks about mental resilience, right? He says,
Oh wait, sorry. Just 1
Yeah.
minute. It's
Yeah.
it's 1 minute before midnight. I need to eat my first chocolate from December. Sorry about that.
You eat your first
Excellent.
chocolate for December.
Yes.
You have this like ritual on the first of every year. Like, ah, my first.
Gotta have my
I
chocolate.
have- Got it. No. It is every day of December until Christmas.
Oh, it's like a Lent thing.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay,
Gotcha,
that's
okay,
cool.
okay.
I don't know how it's called in English. The
Yeah,
Advent
let-
calendar.
I don't think we have anything like that.
Huh. Or not Lent, Advent calendar.
Yes.
Oh, it's Advent. I gotcha.
Lent. Incorrect. So, Chocolate Man. He says, resilience, mental resilience in specific, is arguably the most critical trait of a world-class performer, and it should be nurtured continuously. Left to my own devices, I am always looking for ways to become more and more psychologically impregnable. When uncomfortable, my instinct is not to avoid the discomfort, but to become at peace with it. When injured, which happens frequently in the life of a martial artist, I try to avoid painkillers and to change the sensation of pain into a feeling that is not necessarily negative. My instinct is always to seek out challenges as opposed to avoiding them. Now, I think this is absolutely fascinating, right?
And painful.
Yes, and
It's
painful.
not painful. Did you hear him? He makes it not painful.
He
anymore.
he makes
No, it
pain
is
not
painful.
bad. That's what he. It's not that he's
Yes.
not feeling the pain. It's that the pain isn't bad. So,
Yeah, that's the worst part about pain is that it feels like really bad. So if he makes it that it's like, the thing is right is it doesn't. If you don't feel like it feels bad, then it doesn't feel bad. That's the point, right?
yeah, precisely. So
It's just like people die if they are killed, but like whatever.
I mean, that's one way to think about it, I guess.
Hold up, Hero Emiya.
Yeah, I mean, but like, I will point to this as like a really this is an argument for exposure therapy, basically, right? Like, this is how he gets over it. He just does it until it's not bad anymore, you know. And I'll point to the way that he dealt with the music stuff too. You know, it was not by, you know, like studying or thinking about it or whatever. He just literally just blasted awful music that he hated until that no longer bothered him, until he was just used to it, right? And it's like, it's that same like repetition thing that like makes practice. I mean, it's literally practicing, right? It's like practicing being uncomfortable, and like I think that's the crystallization of the thought. Actually, is being uncomfortable is a skill, and you can practice it, and you can practice being uncomfortable and being okay being uncomfortable, and like that's like a pretty novel concept. I think you don't hear that a whole ton of other places. Like, I don't know. Like one thing that I've done, and I've mentioned this I think before, but not on the show, is like if I'm in a good spot in my life and I'm feeling ambitious, one of the things that I like to do is I try to become more comfortable with boredom, right? Like if I'm in the restroom or standing in line at like the grocery store or something like that, right? Like a situation where I would almost certainly be checking my phone, I will intentionally choose not to and just like experience the boredom and just kind of like appreciate the range in human emotion or something. And that, like, that sounds like so Ivory Towers, so like I'm like almost embarrassed to say it, but like I don't know, like I feel like it actually has had like an effect on my ability to like cope with boredom. And
yes, I also
honestly, I kind of do the same thing,
that.
but like I don't really ever feel bored anymore. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm always focused on my breathing or focused on some cool thing that I see, and like I'm just never bored, right? So I'm like,
Moribite is trying to survive constantly, so he's never bored.
It's not dinner.
yeah, it's actually so dumb, but focusing on your breath is actually really fun.
Yeah, yeah, no, I am a really distracted guy. As in, if I'm bored, I will be doing something else. So I learned how to pen spin really well in school because of that. No kidding. And then listen to music or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that the how to word the words. It's yes, being bored, like being bored and focus is a skill. Not letting boredom distract you is indeed a skill that's practicable, and it's really hard to do.
Yes.
Because when you're bored, you're exactly at the point where it's easiest to not want to stay focused or stay doing nothing. It's the definition of boredom, basically. So.
Yeah. So learning to combat that and like either become not bored in a situation that would be boredom inducing, or to just like live with the boredom and be okay with it. Both are worth practicing. He talks about.
I guess for me, it's probably because I have like I work at a call center, so like in between calls it's really boring. So I guess that's probably why I spent so much time practicing being bored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can easily see that.
From me, when I'm bored, one of the things that I do is read compulsively. As in, I'll start getting slightly bored, and I will just eat up
Like
any
read the back of a shampoo bottle.
No. Like take a 3,000-page fiction on the web and just start reading it, and then.
Oh, that
not
sounds
bored anymore.
fun.
Well, the thing is, I just lose any ability to focus on anything else. Like, I mean, I will just. I have started things like that, and like 3,000, like most recently, one that I would actually recommend. Maybe not on this show. This is quite graphic, but whatever. It's like it's more than 5,000 pages of fiction, and I read the thing in like 2 weeks because I was bored. Mm-hmm. And anytime I wasn't actively doing anything, I was reading.
What was it?
The one that I can recommend openly is Mother of Learning, and the other one I'll talk to you about it later if you want.
You can recommend it. I mean, we've given about as much of an introduction for this thing as can be given, so
Right.
Consume
right.
at
It's
your own
called
risk.
It's called Everybody Loves Large Chests, and the
I
title
see.
is the title is a pun. It's not about it's not about obviously.
it's like chests, like like RPG. Okay,
It's
nice.
it's about a mimic, so
Wow.
Actually,
No,
A
wow.
mimic? Like a chest mimic?
That's hysterical.
Wait, that's
It
crazy
is.
awesome.
But the thing is still really really graphic, and
Yeah.
the author makes it not children friendly.
Okay, consume at your own risk, but
Yes.
recommendation on board. How amusing.
That was pretty funny.
So, I could talk about how when playing cards, he doesn't intentionally arrange the hands in order to become more comfortable, or like he leaves his living space messy to challenge himself to be able to remember where stuff is. Here's my question, right? Okay,
On the last one, I'm like that's the opposite of what I do. For me,
Yeah, right?
I leave my
it's
living space
uncomfortable
messy
to,
and
to,
then
to
not.
tidy things up.
Yeah. No, like a tidy person intentionally being messy in order to become a bigger brain human. Now that is like, I don't know.
Maybe
Like,
I
I
need
can't
to
even
tidy-
comprehend
maybe-
that level. Like,
I need
that's
to
so
become a
good.
tidy person to big brain my brain.
Yeah. That's the Yomi 3 of living space. Absolutely insane. Yeah. So yeah. So here's my question. And by the way, this is the end of the chapter, so we've got some time to think about this one. What are some things that you guys currently are struggling with in your games that you think it would be valuable to become more accustomed to? And how would you go about doing that?
I mean, I struggle with self-confidence. I don't know how you practice that, but most of the time my first thought is I'm gonna get my ass kicked, not I'm gonna beat this kid's ass. So you can kind of see that there's an issue there, right? Because if I go in thinking I'm gonna lose, what's gonna happen, right?
And it's like a fine line too,
I-
right? Because he talks in Mental Game of Poker about like you don't want to give yourself reps on like doing the wrong thing. You know?
Yep.
So like
Yep.
I don't know. How does one there's a question. How does one reconcile that, right? Not wanting to practice doing the incorrect response, right? But still wanting to put yourself in challenging situations so that you can actually learn how to like deal with it.
Yeah.
What can be
I don't
done
know.
there?
Just do the wrong
You'll
thing
get
until you do it right.
into very uncomfortable situations, even by doing the right things. So I really don't think there's like, unless it's like walking to lane and burning like your mana, like to practice combos. Well, that's like obviously something that's really easy to toggle on and off. You know, so it's really something that's completely out of the game nearly. But for anything else, I really think there are way more than enough situations that are uncomfortable, and you don't need to create ones yourself.
Fair enough. I think
Or you just pick champions that put you in uncomfortable situations by definition, and you learn how to play them properly.
yeah, maybe that's like the higher level of learning.
Yeah.
There is just like it's important to be uncomfortable sometimes, and that's okay. And like just because something is difficult or doesn't feel good immediately doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad and that you should avoid it, right? Like it's okay to play champions you're bad at. It's okay to if you're actively working on your tilt, right? It's okay to play one more game when you're tilted and try to play through it, right? Like
Yeah.
these kinds of things that are difficult but deliberate are still are worth
Yeah.
doing, I guess. It's
Basically,
probably
me
the
playing
takeaway.
Lee Sin for 50 games and
Yeah.
hinting for more than half of them,
Yeah.
and feeling like absolute garbage, going from D1 to D4 in 2 weeks because of it.
Yeah. But
Now it's fine.
yep, now you're gonna have Lee hands. That's gonna be insane.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Actually, funnily, I'm gonna be a Lee with hands and eyes.
Wait, no, that's
Wait,
that's
that's
fake
illegal.
news. That
You
can't
can't have
happen.
eyes when you play Lee Sin.
Impossible.
It's
It's
illegal.
that groundbreaking.
Well, that concludes the chapter this week. What do we got for takeaways?
Sushi. I'm gonna. Okay, that was
You wanna
Boo!
get
Boo!
I made myself.
want to
look.
get better?
What's
You want
important?
to get better at something? Throw yourself at it.
Oh.
That's just pretty much the message, right? Except for the fact that you have to have a game plan, right? But like, the essential message is like no one got better at anything by being too afraid to do it.
For me, the biggest takeaway is probably on the putting yourself into uncomfortable situations willingly when you have the willpower to spare to make yourself more used to it. And as in an actual target practice, you know. Yep, that's it for me. And what about you?
I think I'm trying to remember what we were talking. It was like halfway down here. We were talking about something. I'm trying to remember what it was that was like so good. I think for me, honestly, it's re-examining the reading of what's going on with that earthquake, honestly, and you know, I think I overfit the model from Mental Game Poker 2 a little bit too much here, and so to kind of take a step back and think that like maybe there's something more here, and like what could that be? Like reopening that as a question, I think is my biggest takeaway. Which I will summarize as reopening the question of what's up with that earthquake, yo.
Understandable.
I think so too.
Because like I don't know, like if there's something there, like then that's kind of a big deal. So I don't know. I'm gonna do some more thinking about that and see if I can come up with any conclusions. Well, that was fun. We're done. Signing off. 3, 2, 1.